More and more, we're starting to hear about emotional intelligence. First, I think we need to understand what it is in order to determine if and how we can improve our EQ, right? Unlike IQ, your EQ or emotional intelligence speaks to your feelings and your thoughts. And in fact, emotional intelligence is you being aware of the thoughts and feelings and emotions that you have, and then understanding how to control those, right? Understanding what mechanisms are needed in order to control your emotions when dealing with others, right? In specific relationships, and how to go about best control those emotions during specific instances. A lot of it is you hear about as it relates to your workplace, because in many cases, when we talk about your skills, your abilities, emotional intelligence can also play a role in how you are perceived by your coworkers or superiors, and can be the difference between you moving up the corporate ladder, if you will. Just wanted to talk a little bit about some methods or some approaches to improving your EQ. To just stop and think about what you've done, even if you take a specific period of time, just the way you are, the way you've been within the last 5 years, 6 years, year, and just maybe reflect back on some of the actions that you've taken, specifically in your workplace. Doesn't have to be limited to, but if we're talking about trying to help get a promotion or things like that, then obviously we want to link it back to your workplace. But you want to think about or reflect on some of the behavior or some of the ways in which you've handled specific situations, and look at what you think you've done correctly in the way in which you reacted. Look at ways that you can improve. So when you talk about your EQ, then is questions that you want to ask yourself, right? Especially as you're reflecting, is how did I do when someone said this to me, or when this situation was brought to me? How did I react? Are there opportunities for me to react differently? The answer is always yes, right? I mean, even if we think that we are reacting in the best way possible, maybe others don't. So oftentimes it's about finding out how others view you. And we can't be afraid to ask others to sort of give us their take on, some of the things that we do or have done, to learn in which ways we can improve on our emotional deficiencies, if you will, or emotional weaknesses. So asking someone, or even asking yourself, if you're reflecting, what are some of my strengths, right? When it comes to, relationships, work-related relationships, there are strengths and there are weaknesses. How do you perform in meetings, when talking with others, with customers? So that's one of the things that you want to do, is you sort of reflect, take time and ask those questions, those, key questions that can give you a gauge as to where you are, and what role does emotion play in your decision making. Just sort of stopping and thinking and reflecting, I think, is definitely a good way to start to at least recognize and be aware of, how we are, how we perform, how we react, in order to then work on making those potential improvements. I think once we know, another thing is, once we know how we react, right? Once we are in tune with our thoughts, then we can start trying to control our thoughts. And it sounds crazy, because I know a lot of times, for all of us, right? Our thoughts always seem to be running amok, right? All of us have, 10 million things running through our heads at any given time. And, few people can, and probably all of us at some point can stop and focus on, one or two things at any given time. But for the most part, there are tons and tons of things running through our heads. And for us, it's about figuring out how we can control those thoughts, right? How do we go about controlling thoughts? Now, the thoughts are going to be there, right? So it's almost like finding a way to compartmentalize specific thoughts, right? I don't need to worry about this particular thing right now because it's not going to help me in this situation. I think the key to controlling thoughts is ensuring or being aware that those thoughts are there, and then thinking about what action or reaction, right, we have towards, those specific thoughts. So when we talk about controlling, it's more about the act itself. Yes, we have these thoughts. How do we then prevent, those negative thoughts from becoming negative actions, if you will? A lot of things can happen that can be deemed negative, right? Someone or people say that you can't control, a bird deciding to fly and stop and sit on your head, right? There's some things you just can't control. However, what you can control though is the prevention of the bird from building a nest, that kind of thing, right? So things happen in life. Okay, can't really control that particular action, but I can control what I do next, right, to prevent any additional negative action. Another thing is criticism, right? Oftentimes, we don't like to hear what we deem to be negative criticism, but we can learn a lot from what is shared by others, right? Sometimes, looking at it as a negative isn't necessarily the best method, right? It's somewhere in us, there's something that is lacking. We are deficient or weak in a specific area. And if we are being told about it, then that's a way that we can work on improving in that particular area. Be authentic, right? I think the more you are the real you in front of whomever, then I think it's easier to continue to just be you. It's difficult when you've been putting on an act, because now you gotta continue to work on that same act, while just being authentic is just organic and it's just you, and there's nothing that needs to be added, taken away. It's just the way you are, assuming that you remove all of those negative influences from whomever you may be. It's not only, I think, about breaking your arm, attempting to pat yourself on the back. It's about sort of rewarding others, and in any type of way, right? I think if you just kind of praise others and give thanks and blessings to folks that you may see on a regular basis, right? And again, it could be the smallest thing. I think that helps you internally too. It helps you to grow emotionally when you can say to someone else, I hope you have a great day today, and hoping that you have a blessed day. Just, because it doesn't have to be any particular reason. And you want to, again, be authentic in that. You don't want to do it so that it helps you. You want to do it because that's really what you want to do for someone else, right? You just want to wish someone that they, are doing well. You want to acknowledge, if you are in a position of power in some way or another, you have employees, you want to appreciate your employees. You want to show them your appreciation, right? For the smallest of things. And just like we may not like getting what we may deem to be negative feedback, I think it helps to build and increase our own emotional intelligence if we were to give feedback, constructive criticism to someone else in an effort to help that person, right? Definitely not about, trying to point out someone's, weaknesses for the purpose of doing so, but for the purpose of helping that person to improve themselves. And I think that that helps, us as we're attempting to do that genuinely, authentically. We're trying to help someone better themselves. Then that begins to make you a better you. So I think that as long as you can, be open to criticism and be open to also giving constructive criticism, then again, you're moving notches up the ladder towards improving your own EQ or emotional intelligence. Something as simple as an apology, and I know for many of us, that's probably one of the hardest things to do, right? To be accountable. And I think that's where that comes in, right? Being able to say you're sorry because, you missed a deadline, because you were wrong in something that, you were asked to do, and maybe you didn't perform to your best. And I think that, showing some human behavior like apologizing helps the individual who is apologizing, and of course it helps the person. So I think it takes a lot. Obviously, it's from an emotional perspective, it's a courageous act, right? To say I'm sorry or to apologize to someone for whatever reason. But at the very least, what it does is it shows as a human being, right? That you can show signs of humility, and I think doing so helps, again, from an emotional perspective, to increase your awareness, and can help heighten that that emotional ladder climb, right, if you will. So it's about apologizing. By the same token, you certainly want to be able to I know it's hard, but you can forgive and forget, right? You can apologize for being wrong, but then you could also forgive those who may have done something to you. Again, we're talking about emotional intelligence and how, we can improve our own EQs. I've primarily been talking about bringing this to the workforce, right? To your workplace, and trying to then utilize that awareness to put you in a better light, right? Amongst your peers, amongst your superiors. But I think it will spread beyond the workplace, of course, right? It's just you being aware of your feelings, your emotions, and then controlling how you react. Again, it doesn't have to be limited to the workplace, but if you're talking about trying to make specific strides, then you can begin to apply a lot of what I'm saying to you right now. Honoring and keeping your commitments, and obviously that's big. If you say that you're going to do something, then make sure that you do that something at work, right? And I think that that'll go a long way. When you begin to break your promises or break your commitments, then that chips away at that, increase that you may have earned in other areas. So, don't be afraid, right? Don't say that you're going to do something if you don't think that you can realistically achieve that specific something. So I think it's easier if you mention certain things up front and say, I don't know, that may not be something that I'm able to do by that particular time frame. But if you give me another week, then certainly I can work on getting it done. And I think that, people will respect you for being able to say, you know what, okay, you can't do it by that time, so when can you do it by? And then obviously you can add that additional week if that's the case. But I think just being honest about what you can do, and then holding to whatever commitment you sort of get yourself into or decide that you want to do, I think is big in terms of you improving and increasing, again, your EQ. And then, the what I want to do here is just kind of sometimes, and this happens in many areas, is people have a tendency to get into situations. They get into situations where their own emotional intelligence or their emotions or their feelings are sabotaged, right? And it is okay to just say no and get away from what you think may be deemed as something that may have a negative influence on you emotionally. In some circumstances, we can't avoid it. And again, we could go back to some of the other items that I spoke of, right? It's how it's all about how we react, right? But if you can prevent those and sort of protect yourself from those emotional sabotages, then by all means, make sure to do it. Sometimes, we get into situations where other people tend to or seem to want to manipulate, your emotions, and they want to do so obviously so that they can step on you in order for them to grow in certain ways or be looked at favorably in a specific light. But if you know that, then don't partake in those situations, and do all that you can to continue to work on you. And if you see that there are those in your circle that are working against you, then those are the people that you may want to just shy away from, right? They don't have your best interest at heart. So then why put yourself in that situation for someone to even have the opportunity to sabotage all the work that you've done on yourself? So hopefully these approaches to improving your emotional intelligence make sense. Again, just keep in mind that it's all about just being aware of who you are and how you react to certain things, and then determining which one of those things you can kind of just corral and bring in and sort of control, and then taking time, reflecting, and then proceeding with a specific decision. So it works in business from a decision-making standpoint, right? Just analyzing, evaluating, getting all the data together before reacting. So it should work from an emotional perspective as well. Emotional intelligence. How to improve it, how to increase it. We'll continue working on it.